uh, to episode 11. I guess we could call it episode 11, or we could just call it the Catcher in the Rye review that me and Joey are going to do. We're going to do one of these at least bare minimum. We're going to do one per month. The last one we did, in case you didn't catch it already, was the Screw Tape Letters by C.S. Lewis. So this is the author of Chronicles of Narnia, right? Um, and that's a really good read, and we enjoyed doing that review, and we had a pretty good reaction from everybody. Everybody seemed to like it. So um, we definitely do, want to keep going with that. So if you have any ideas that you'd like, if there's something we're not doing in the process of reviewing that is not quite good enough, we sort of just need you to let us know, so that we can make sure to add that in. We can um, juice everything up and make everything look pretty and all this. Sorry, guys, I'm just making sure everything's working on the tubes and the TikToks and Twitters and Facebooks and various things. And if Joey, we have Joey in the wings, just so that everybody knows, it's not just me today. Joey is doing some behind the scenes infrastructure work, helping me out that way, so that if I try to do all of this myself, it doesn't go so well. So Joey is definitely broadening his horizons and getting a little more tech savvy in various areas to be the biggest possible help. But what we really need everybody to do is to make sure that you get over to YouTube, and we need you to follow and subscribe and like the videos that we put out over there, and check out the playlists that we've created from other YouTube channels that are good, to almost like a curation, to make sure that you're getting the absolute best possible information you can on your journey. You can find those on under playlists. There's a whole buttload of them on different. They some are a little wider ranging. Some are very very specific. So, but one thing is for sure, they will help you out with something at some point. There's a lot of really great stuff there. We've got all the Stephen Kings and the J.K. Rowlings, and a lot of indie authors that we do on this channel, are on ourselves, and other ones that have been added in there, kind of getting everybody's take from it, agents, editors, the whole works. So that's just I just wanted to quickly let everybody know that we can do more stuff, get wicked awesome guests, have competitions and everything, if you will just do us the honor of heading over to the YouTube. If you're watching this on Facebook, if you could do that, man, that would be so nice of you, and we would definitely make sure that you don't end up regretting it. Right? So now, moving on. Today we're going to be reviewing The Catcher in the Rye, which was written by J.D.Sallinger in 1949. J.D. himself was not. It was a pretty young man at the time. I believe he was 29. I think he was 29. So not far removed from university himself. The book follows him on a few days in his life. It actually starts out with an epigraph where he's waking up in a sanitarium in California, and he is thinking about what happened a year ago. And then we are told the story of simply that he was expelled from school, and he was sent back to New York, where he ended up kind of bumming around and looking for something to do, as a sort of, in the words of that Meatloaf song, all revved up and no place to go type of feeling that people have when they're 17. And he got into some trouble, and he doesn't make great choices, and but it's a story arc, and that's what you have to remember. It doesn't have to be thematic. It can simply be a story arc. And that is, to me, when people say, what does Americana mean, that's what it is to me. That it means that there's no theme. It means that you're just enjoying a story into and of itself, with no political leanings or bias or any of these things. And this is, there was a time in America where this was a beautiful thing that was handled very often and very well. And, things got a little bit preachy at certain times, and things got a little bit activisty. at times, and things deviated from that. But one can at least look at Salinger's work here and say that is a story. There's no ulterior motives involved. It's sure it's exploring the component parts of depression, and it's looking at that at aspects of mental health that we probably don't think about a whole bunch all the time. But there's a lot there, and so I guess we can get started from there. And I will bring Joey back in. There you are, sir. Welcome back.
Welcome. Thank you. I
Well,
agree with you.
if you
Mhm.
could sum up Catcher in the Rye in one sentence,
Oh, okay.
what would it be?
Emo kid trying to understand the adult world.
Fair enough.
Period. That's my one sentence.
Cool.
Hmm.
Cool. Um, and I'm not going to do the one sentence because I just did 800 of them. So no,
Okay.
thank you.
Hmm.
I did. I put it. I paid my dues. Okay. I'm the fantasy writer over here. Okay. I can appreciate Americana. I can never ever write it, and I know this. And this is where my appreciation for Americana comes from. It comes from the fact that I am keenly aware that I could never, ever, ever do this successfully myself because it's just not the way I'm wired. And that is
Hmm.
what is beautiful about writing is that you can interpret the work of somebody doing something that you can't even begin to wrap your head around. And through the empathetic link that the arts is supposed to give you, you can start to feel what somebody was feeling or what they've experienced, or maybe a story they heard. This is a really short book. He could have been having a beer with somebody at a bar,
Hmm.
and that person could have told him this story in 6 hours. Could they not?
Hmm.
I,
Absolutely.
I think so. So, I mean, who's to say that that's not exactly what happened? Who is to say that? So, yeah, that's one of the more interesting parts of it for me is that it is pure Americana before Americana got commercialized and therefore not what it was, right? Like I see a kind of lineage there. I think of it like a lineage where it starts with where it actually starts on the other side of the Atlantic with Dickens, and then Mark Twain, and then you move forward in time, and you kind of bump into these characters. I think that Salinger was that character in 1949, in the same kind of. I would contextually put him in the same area as Dickens and Mark Twain and Russians like Tolstoy in his time was doing exactly the same thing. So it transcended of nation, but it just so happens that in 1949, the United States was able to create a J.D. Salinger. Like, what are your thoughts on J.D. Salinger?
Yeah, the thing with J.D. Salinger is this book. He actually the character Holden Caulfield that represents him. I mean, he actually took it personal
Mm,
when the editors at a publishing house were like, "Well, you should change this and this." He got upset. He grabbed his manuscript. This is back in the days when you had to have your manuscript, right? And he just took his manuscript back and left. And he calls his agent, and he actually took it very personal. The thing is, he actually, and I watched a documentary on this that he was in World War II, and he actually landed on Normandy Beach during D-Day, and
yeah.
he had with him the first six chapters of Catcher in the Rye in his
Mhm.
coat as they stormed the beach of Normandy. And then there's some pictures of him during his World War II uh, tour of duty of him with like his little portable typewriter
Yeah.
off to the side working on it as the war's going on, you know?
Mhm.
So he took the character or the book very seriously, and he took the character very seriously because, like you said, like I believe too, that was him.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
he put all of himself into that, and that's why he took it so personal.
Yeah, and if I give the devil their due on the other side and say, okay, say it wasn't him, I could still say, like I said, I could still say, well, Salinger could have walked into a bar and had a beer with a guy, and that guy could have told him that story in 6 hours, right?
Hmm.
It's not realistic. There's nothing more
Hmm.
realistic in the world. Like
Hmm.
it couldn't be made more realistic than it is. And
Hmm.
whether that's because it's from personal experience or not, because we never truly will know that. But
Right.
we can certainly have our speculations, and we can plant that flag there if we want to. I do personally. I think it feels so personal, and I think I would say to your point, what supports your point there is in the fact that, and people wonder, like a lot of people hate the book. Obviously, it's one of those polarizing books, but
Mhm.
I think if you look at the fact that it's never ever been put on the silver screen, it's been a bestseller for like
That was
60.
his wish, though. That was like he made that into a contract when he published the book. Like, I don't want this into a movie. When he died, he actually it was part of his will or whatever that this
Mm.
cannot be a movie ever. And it's
Well,
like,
we'll see what
wow.
happens in about 10 years when
Yeah,
it's
when it's public domain, right?
yeah, because it's public domain on screen long before it is in book, right? You get
Mhm.
90 years. It's 90 years after your death for books. It's only 70 years after your death for movies.
Mhm.
Interesting that they treat scripts and manuscripts differently that way. But nonetheless, I digress. And yeah,
Mhm.
so Salinger was, if you were wondering what he did in World War II, believe his first trip there was mainly artillery. Um,
Mhm.
I think he was educated enough to be kind of doing the trigonometry involved in artillery. Um, that's what I read. Uh, these are all, there's a lot of eponymous, you know, sources from World War II that you can't be too certain about. Do we really, really know what Elvis and Hendrix were doing, etc.? Like maybe, how much
Mhm.
of it is mythos? We don't know, but that's as near as we can figure that that's kind of at least where he entered into the war, and he didn't really, I don't think, gave away too much about what he was doing while he was there. Um, so I guess I guess one of the important parts here is uh, if we look at this experience and we see what's going on with Holden at the start, uh, and that he's in a sanitarium. It's very interesting. It's this kind of
Mhm.
epigraphical. Um, he's kind of breaking the fourth wall, which I love. And
Mhm.
I've just broken the wall like twice in the last chapter that I wrote because I really love that. So I
But
will
why
admit
do
to
you think
some
he was
bias.
there? Why do you think he was in the sanitarium? I mean, he wasn't crazy.
No, and
Mhm.
actually, as a result of the Catcher in the Rye in France, I believe it was France, they took from 100, I think from 100 different universities, they took students to sanitariums.
Mhm.
This is not too long after maybe it was 1956, I think. They took these students to sanitariums, um, along with patients from other sanitariums. And so they implanted some
Mhm.
students that were then to pretend that they were mentally incoherent,
Mhm.
and a lot of them fooled the doctors, a lot of them.
Mhm. I think I could because we go to the store. I act like I have Tourette's all the time, just
Yeah,
because I get bored out in public.
I think in all of the, as soon as they went, like the results were iffy until they went up to about 16 students, but when they put 16 students in with the 84 actual mental patients, um it went really pear-shaped. Like it was 12 out of the 16 students fooled the staff, the doctors,
Mhm.
the nurses, everybody. 12 out of
Mhm.
16 once they got to that level. So
Mhm.
you have a good point there, and lots of people, enough people, actually made that hypothetical claim from the university system that a big portion of France was able to, you know,
But why do you think Holden was there?
I think I kind of lean towards that
Like,
myself. I actually haven't thought about it enough, to be
I think
honest.
it, I thought it's like because he tells the story, and then when he finally, and we'll get into it, but at the end, when he finally goes home, I think his parents were kind of fed up with him because this wasn't the first school he got kicked out of, and they're like, "What's wrong with you, dude?" So they throw him into this, psych ward to figure out what's wrong with him. That's what I think that his parents put him there.
Oh, I see, I see. You think he was committed.
I think he was committed by his parents. I don't think he went in on his own accord.
So you don't think that because maybe I'm wrong and I'm jumping ahead a bit, but doesn't he mention later on in the book, like, wasn't he headed to Grand Central to go to California on his own?
Well, yeah, he was gonna go to California, get a job. He was gonna take his sister Phoebe, or
Yeah,
Phoebe wanted to go with him.
right. But he
But
would, but
yeah, he wanted to.
that's why he ended up staying because
He
Phoebe.
wanted, yeah, because Phoebe, but he wanted to kind of just start his own life and get away from all the phoniness of what he felt the adult world was about. And I guess he just wanted to jump into it, which, a lot of, I did it when I was 17, 18 years old.
Mhm.
I mean, I was younger when I started college, and I was younger when I became a paramedic. I was 17 years old when I was a paramedic. Well, I'm still living at home with my mom and dad, and
Yeah.
I have a real career job and making good money. And it was like at some point I was like, hey, you know what? I don't need to follow your rules. I could just move out and do my own thing. So I think a lot of kids, I don't say everybody, kind of goes through that, where they just want to leave and just do their own thing,
Hmm.
rather than go to college. And we're experiencing this with somebody we know that their kid would rather have a couple jobs than I mean, they live at home. You got accepted to a college, go take a class or two, over the winter break. You just, take math or something, the BS classes, and get your education while you can, because when you're 30, it's a lot harder to go to college.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
So,
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah, and I mean it's the tragedy. It's what the Greeks called the tragedy of youth. And we in modern times say um that youth is wasted on the young, and
mhm,
it's that classic thing, right? But so yeah. So I guess to wrap up the epigraphical section before we get into the actual linear story plot of the Catcher in the Rye, like, because I
mhm,
almost, the whole epigraph sequence is almost like a separate entity, and it's like I feel like that's just establishing the narrator's connection to the story, right? Just making it a
mhm,
little. It's turning a third person narrative into a first person in a way without actually writing the first person, which is absolutely a brilliant move. But
mhm.
the last thing that I wanted to mention on that topic is we also know that Holden's younger brother has died.
Yeah, of leukemia.
Yeah. And
Mhm,
so that is tough. Um, that'll toughen you up as a teenager, right?
mhm,
Uh, to the point where when you're a teenager who's been toughened up enough by something like that, and then you encounter people, and I'm just gonna, not pitter patter around too much about it, but one can go to a university and you will have no difficulty finding people who are very arrogant, snooty, um, uh, and self-aggrandizing.
mhm,
And so, to somebody who's just watched their sibling die and then be put into the ground, and then you see a bunch of peacocks wandering around a university campus, uh, you know, treating you with disdain because you don't have because your family doesn't have as much money as theirs. I could see
mhm,
where this phony thing comes from. It's not just a general hatred for everything in life. It's a hatred for everything that isn't life and death because he's
mhm.
too familiar with life and death.
Right.
And he thinks everything outside of life and death is bullshit. And that's why he's walking around New York, without a coat and it's freezing. And now
Mhm,
he's gonna get wet. He's out on the ice and everything. And it's like that is a dude who thinks that everything but life and death is bullshit.
mhm.
Right? A
Absolutely.
desensitization almost if you think about it, right?
Right. Do
So
you uh do you think that I mean, I think a lot of people say, "Oh, yeah, I connect with Holden, like what he
Mhm.
thought or what he thinks and stuff."
Oh yeah.
But I think at different points in life, because I was like, "Well, what character do I think that I would uh, more connect with?" And I think at different points, if you read this when you're a teenager, yeah, you're going to probably connect with Holden. But I
Yeah.
think one of the most entertaining chapters, and I don't know if it was two or three, it was early on in the book, and I feel like I connect with this character now, maybe because I'm getting old, but was his teacher Spencer, old Spencer that he went to go
Yeah, yeah.
visit before he left, and he was just all, oh, and throws his paper and misses the bed, and Holden just didn't want to be there, but I felt like, I felt like I connected with him because the way he talked, he was like, "What's wrong with you, boy?" You know, so that's
Yep.
why I failed you because you're stupid, So I think we connect with a lot of the characters at different points in our lives,
Well, that's all the story has. It doesn't have a coherent plot or a theme. It's
No,
all character development. It's just
mhm,
packing these characters full of all of the words, all of them,
mhm.
right?
It's like each chapter is almost like a short story in itself.
Yeah.
Okay, this is what happened right before he left. He's on top of the
Well,
hill. He was
each
very
chapter is like
creative.
flash fiction. Actually, it's not even. It's some of it's not even short story length, right?
Yes, yeah, because the chapters are pretty short. I mean, it's a quick read, I felt, and
Oh yeah,
the thing
lightning.
is, there's like you said, it's flash fiction each chapter. He was able to connect it to go from one chapter to the next, but
Yeah,
you could just pull chapter 7 by itself and still be like, "Oh, hey, that's a pretty good little story," not knowing that it came from Catcher in the Rye and stuff like that,
yeah, absolutely.
you
Yeah,
know?
absolutely. Because it has a coherent movement. It has a
Mhm.
coherent direction. Just doesn't have an arc,
Alright.
right? And that's and I like the spirit of it. He said, "Hey, I wonder if you could do this if you did this." Right?
Mhm.
I mean, how many amazing inventions have human beings created because they said that sentence? Do you
Right?
know? Like every amazing thing that exists on the earth is because somebody said, "Hey, if we did that with that, then couldn't we do this?"
Mhm.
That's what it is. And and
Where
and
do
it's
the ducks go when the pond freezes over, Jay? That's what I wanna know too.
word of the what?
Where do the ducks go when the pond freezes over?
The Baja Peninsula mostly.
Mostly, right?
Yeah, they mostly go to the Baja. The ducks and geese that fly south from North America, generally,
Mm.
most of them are on the Baja Peninsula. Some of them will go down as far as Uruguay.
Mm. Well, I can tell
And-
you right now that they take a break here in Southwest Utah
oh yeah,
every once in a while, right over here on the golf course, because there's goose
oh yeah,
poop
yeah.
everywhere, you
Well, yeah,
know?
because a golf course is like a friggin' tiny little green dot in a sea of
Right?
godforsaken wasteland.
Desert, right? But I was walking my dog, and we were walking past that, and I actually because I talk to my dog like he's human, like he understands me or something, and I was like,
Yeah,
"Hey, look, this is where all the ducks go." Just to and he don't know what I'm saying. If there was a person that was listening to me, overhearing me, they're probably like, "Okay, this guy needs to go to a sanitarium," you know, not knowing what I'm actually thinking in my head. So,
we
uh,
have reason to believe Holden is hiding behind the rose bush.
right? There was this one quote in there, and I don't know exactly where it is or what it said, but I can give you the gist where he was walking across the street, and he said he felt like every time he was taking a step across the street that he was disappearing more and more. And just the way it was written, I felt it was very artistic and I could see it. And I remember I underlined it, not in this time, but I've read this book several times in the past.
I've
And I
got an
read,
idea.
I
I've got
think
an
people
idea,
should
Joe.
read it. Yeah.
I will find it right now. While
Mm.
I'm doing that, why don't you tell everybody
Uh,
what you're doing behind the scenes, tinkering around with seeking the great perhaps.
oh, okay. So,
Just as a little break while I'm doing
well,
this.
this is our break. Okay. So I have a book that was published in 2022, Seeking the Great Perhaps. There it is, Joey Andolini. It's in paperback and it's on Amazon. I think it's great. I think it should be a movie. Of course, I'm a little biased about that. But this March 22nd will be the 3-year anniversary of this book being published. So what I am doing is I am currently working on turning this book into the unabridged version, which is stuff I left out, um, making the timeline a little bit better, cleaning it up, adding things that's not in the original, the unabridged. So for right now, um, you can still get the paperback. Not many have sold, so for the people that have bought them, good for you because it's going to be worth something someday because not many people bought it. But I'm coming out with this unabridged version, which I'm hoping will take off. And currently, I would say I am about 45 to 50% done with the unabridged version. My goal is to get it done by March 22nd, but in reality, it's probably going to be more like June ish, you know. So if you like historical fiction slash fantasy, a lot of action pack in here. Seeking the Great Perhaps, and I'll just quickly, because Jay's back, read the back of it for you so you don't have to look it up.
Excellent.
It's the year 1896. Meet Jack London, age 17. For those of you who don't know who Jack London is, he's the guy that wrote Called the Wild and White Fang. So meet Jack London at age 17, following thousands of men and women into the Yukon Territory in search of gold. For Jack, the journey holds the promise of another kind of fortune, challenge, and adventure. But what he finds in the wild north is something far more sinister than he could ever have imagined. Kidnapping and slavery, the murderous nature of desperate men, and among it all, supernatural beasts of the wilderness that prey upon the weakness in men's hearts. This is not just an adventure story, but also a spiritual journey that only a few are brave enough to seek. As Jack seeks his great perhaps, journey with him on your own spiritual awakening as we are all seeking the great perhaps. Dun dun dun.
Mhm.
All
Bingo.
right, done. Back
Wicked
to
awesome.
Catcher in the Rye.
I'm so glad you're working on it. Okay, I got this quote here.
Mm,
After I cross the road,
mm-hmm.
or no, after I get across the road, I felt like I was sort of disappearing. It was that kind of crazy afternoon, terrifically cold and no sun out or anything. And you felt like you were disappearing every time you crossed a road. Yeah, so there's like an ethereal sense of almost like um is that an existential crisis? Is that somebody going, I think, therefore I am? Or what
The
if I
thing
only
is,
think I am, but I'm actually just a fake thing,
the
phony?
the thing is, he is very astute. I think for a 16, 17-year-old kid, you
Mhm.
know, he got a very
Well,
astute.
because he's writing it when he's 29, of course.
Right, but we're not supposed to know that.
It's the definition of unreliable narrator.
Hmm. Right. So
But anyway, sorry.
I think he's very artistic. So I think he thinks differently than probably most teenagers. Like his roommate, Strad, I think is his name,
Yeah,
and then
yeah, Stradlin
the guy
Heimer.
across the room or whatever. Like there's a bathroom that separates the two rooms and a curtain. So the guy in the other room, Ackley, um, I think those were probably more of what the teenage population is like, and I think Holden is a little bit different, but he's also experienced different things in his life: leukemia of his
Certainly.
brother, death of his brother. Having to go to different schools throughout his young life. I mean, making new friends at each school. That's got to be hard. You know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and I mean, something we often overlook, and it used to be in fiction a bit. Now it's almost like you'll be attacked if you even mention it. But
Hmm.
like the stakes are really high for a kid in the upper crust too. Like you have high grade expectations. You have a lot of really high expectations. Like there is no for I think for a lot of kids who grow up in certain wealthy instances, they don't get to really not care. There's pressure applied all the way along, and huge amounts of money thrown behind it, and then of course that money is always used against you, right?
Mhm.
somebody buys something for you, they're generally, you know,
Mhm.
way more people than it should be is the case will throw it back in your face that they've spent money on you, right? Lots of
Mhm.
parents tend towards that, and it's really bad for your kids. It'll beat them up, right? It's
Mhm.
like creating a guilt cycle. And so we forget that that's not this probably part of the withholding, and I think that that's part of the issue is that whole thing, the demands on a young person that age. And what's interesting too, also, I guess you could say is at this point in time, they generally took um, a year abroad.
Mhm.
Students in the universities at that time, the graduates,
Mhm.
they would take the 1 year break in between uh,
Right.
going to do their masters, and they might
Mhm.
go to a university in another country or something and kind of study stuff that's adjacent to what their major is or
Mhm.
whatever. But they're supposed to be doing something in that year now. So not only has he been excommunicated from the school he was in, and this process of getting toward his break year or whatever has been disrupted, and maybe doesn't happen now. Um, and then we're starting to pile a lot of things that would create cortisol in the brain on top of one another,
Mhm.
and then we're examining somebody who is suddenly just kind of on the run from their parents and in a completely unsupervised environment for maybe the first time in their life at 17. And it's like the fact that he lived at all is kind of surprising
Mhm.
given like what's going on. Like it's like on the ragged edge of survival there, and that's why I said, like, I think that's what he was after, was to be on that ragged edge of survival. And I don't think he cared whether, oops, I accidentally died, like, no big loss, you know. I think
Mhm.
that was there, and I think those it's a funnel. It looks like a funnel to me. It's like somebody poured all the anxiety into this funnel, and it went into this one kid at the wrong possible time, and just so I think
Well,
it's
just
even odds as to whether his parents sent him to California to be institutionalized, or whether he actually ended up going there and had the psychotic break that this story was kind of foretelling.
Mhm.
Because if somebody came to me and told me this story, I would be like, you need to see a therapist because you might be on the verge of a fucking total nervous breakdown.
Right, and
Right?
this is in 1951 or, even the late 40s when it was written. Think of the
49, yeah.
topics think of the topics that he touched on that are today, drugs, alcohol, prostitution, sexual advancement by his old English teacher,
PTSD.
yeah, Peter, and which is causing PTSD, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. Yeah.
it's spending the night at a train station. Not a lot of teenagers have done that. I've done it. That's a
Yeah.
story for another time. But the thing is, he is in the 40s and early 50s experiencing things that here in 2025, it's still like, oh, wow. And when I've asked people that I know, oh, hey, man, have you read this? It's amazing the people that have not read this. And I'm like, are you kidding me? This is,
Well,
you should
and
read
and
it
you
at
know
least
what?
once in your life.
Yeah, and further to that point too, Joe, I would go even deeper than that with you, is that I've also heard a lot of people say, I read this in school, got nothing out of it. I read it when I was 30 and it blew the top of my head off. Do you know what I mean? So
Hmm.
even the people who have read it, they may not have read it far enough into the game to actually get it. Do you know what I
Right.
mean?
Right. Well, I
Right.
know that when I was in school,
There's certain works of fiction that it takes a fully mature, and even a slightly a mind that's mature enough to be pessimistic to actually get the most out of certain things, right?
well,
You don't get Sherlock Holmes until your 40s. You don't actually get how complicated, how nuanced that is. It's
right,
just
unless you watched a movie or something,
yeah, yeah.
you
It's
know?
like a dumb series of fucking bullshit, uh, short thematic. Here's the lesson of this episode things until you're 40 and you go, whoa, whoa, whoa. there was a lot
Right.
more going on there, right?
Well, and think about this. This book sells currently about what, 250,000 books a year. It's
And
the
that,
most it's the
yeah,
most banned book in America for
yeah,
whatever reason,
yeah.
you know?
And
Um,
HarperCollins is still printing it like it's
and
going out
they're
of style.
still right, and they're still printing it. And there's this
Yeah.
guy, J.D. Salinger, I mean, he recently
76
died.
country, 76 or 76 languages it's printed in as well, by the way.
Yeah.
76.
And he recently died, you know, like,
Yeah.
I mean, recently meaning like 2008,
7?
2010. I mean, it was right around that. I say
Yeah.
recently because when someone says, "Hey, 25 years ago," my brain thinks the 80s, but then I think, "Oh my God, that's the early
I,
2000s."
I
You
know it
know?
was I know it was pretty early in the 2000s because I think it wasn't too long after I graduated that he died because I remember,
Mm,
oh, J.D. Salinger died. I just read his book not that long ago. So if I'm looking at it contextually, Jesus,
right.
why don't I
Well,
just check and see when he died? Joe, how
I
about
was
that?
well, or you know what I was gonna say was for the people that want to, go ahead and Google that, you know?
Oh my, is that embarrassing when you forget that you're like sitting in front of a computer? Or um 91 years bloody old. He died on January 27th, 2010
2010. All right. Well,
in
still
New Hampshire.
pretty recent, and he was pretty much of a recluse, they say, but they have pictures of this man, you know, getting in and out of a car and all that kind of stuff. So he went and checked his mail. I know that because I saw pictures of that. And the town that he was in, I know that the people in that town, when like journalists came and asked about him, where where does he live, where's this, where would we find him, they would actually help protect him. Like they wouldn't tell the people where he was at, you
Yeah,
know. So for a guy that published one book, well, two, Franny and Zoe, which is like short stories, but one major book, and then to have to go into seclusion because of that, you know.
yeah,
And I don't know if he went into seclusion like when it came out or soon after, or when after all of a sudden, you know, people were killing people because of this book. John Lennon was shot, not because of the book, but it was odd that the guy that shot John Lennon
yeah,
had like 21 copies of Catcher in the Rye. That's a little weird because he didn't own a bookstore. And then I believe there was like two other deaths, kind of
yeah.
it was Catcher in the Rye related. So there's three
Mhm.
deaths because of this book, and I think maybe that made him like, oh,
In,
something
in
I
in
wrote
the
that
ear,
was so personal to him, that character was so personal to him, and now it caused the death of people. Yeah,
yeah.
I would probably go into seclusion too, you know?
Those three deaths were all in the early 80s. Um, and what everybody came to find out eventually was that it was the only common thread between the three was that the perpetrators were uh, Marxist Maoists, more specifically. Like
Mhm.
the particular variety of Marxism that was going on in China was their thing, and and so for some reason they were able. There was a group of people who was able to twist Catcher in the Rye into a pro-Marxist doctrine, or at least an anti-democracy doctrine, which is really interesting. But it wouldn't
Uh,
be the first time. Like,
you could
for
do that with the
instance,
book. You could do that with Twilight probably if you tried hard enough.
well, look at
You
Nietzsche.
know?
Friedrich Nietzsche. His sister married a Nazi, and ended up helping this Nazi husband of hers twist the work of Friedrich Nietzsche into Hitler doctrine, right? Like you
Hmm.
can easily do it. Like I have a Druid background, right? My grandmother was a is a Druidess, was a Druidess, sorry. And the thing that was believed by Druids for a long time was that you there couldn't be writing until such time as you could mass educate people so that a lot of people could write. As they said, if only a small group of people could write, then you could have then you would just have dogma, and nothing more. And so that's kind of the spectrum onto which that all sits, in my opinion.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's really interesting, and particularly, I know that there was a lot of support for John Lennon's. Uh, I'm a McCartney guy, so I see John Lennon's nonsense, and
Mhm.
that was that. Oh yeah, yeah, great. You're sitting in a $280 a night hotel room and talking about how people shouldn't have stuff. Like, get out of here.
So
And
you're a McCartney guy? Just I
yeah,
know we're
yeah.
getting off. All right. I like George Harrison. I'm more of a Harrison guy.
I'm kind of
Yeah.
just more of an anybody but John Lennon guy, right? Like Ringo
Right.
is a
Oh,
phenomenal drummer, and you could talk to any drummer in the world, and you say, "Can you play note perfect Ringo Starr? Can you play it just like
no,
Ringo played it?" And they will say,
no,
"No, I can't."
no, not at all.
So let's. That's quite a tangent. Wow, did we
Right,
ever I
right.
digress. But
We'll have to
anyway,
go back.
so
Catcher in the Rye.
that's
All right.
so it's funny that he was one of the people who was kind of obfuscated and used by Marxism, which is a big list of things that have been used that way by Marxism for sure,
Mhm.
as a kind of sneaky back hole, or backdoor type of thing, right? Like everything that Voltaire and Rousseau warned us about while they were having a dick measuring contest with their books.
Yeah. Right.
They were also saying, watch out for people who use the works of Voltaire and Salinger and Hemingway and Nietzsche
Well,
to.
from what I understand, J.D. Salinger actually met with Ernest Hemingway
He did.
and gave him this manuscript just to get his like approval almost, because I
Mhm.
think at the time what happened was J.D. Salinger, he was writing a lot of short stories and he was submitting it to all these different magazines or whatever, but in
Yes.
his brain he's like, I'm not a real author until I get it in the New Yorker, until something's published in the New Yorker, that's when I'll consider myself a real author. And then finally years later, something was published, but he was able to meet with Ernest Hemingway, and he gave him this manuscript, Catcher in the Rye, and Hemingway liked it. I think he gave it Siskel and Ebert 2 thumbs up, you know, and that gave him, I guess, the confidence, to proceed further with it at the time. I believe that was before it was actually published. When he gave it to Hemingway. Um,
So just for context here, everybody. After I was right about the artillery thing. After the artillery, J.D. Salinger was recruited into the counter to be a counterintelligence agent, so a
mhm,
spy, in the Fourth Infantry Division in World War II. And it was at that time that he met Ernest Hemingway, who was then a war correspondent.
mhm,
Um, on during the campaign from Normandy, which is the region that I'm writing about right now, into Germany. Salinger was impressed by Hemingway's friendliness and modesty. Hemingway was impressed by Salinger's writing. The two began corresponding. Salinger wrote to Hemingway in July 1946, and their talks were among his few positive memories of the war. Hemingway was present for a memorial service that was conducted uh, for a friend of theirs from World War II, and this is sorry, this isn't confirmed. It's just I guess an old writer's tale.
mhm.
Um, and Hemingway was talking to a young journalist there about J.D. Salinger. Was asked about J.D. Salinger, and he said two words: "Hell of a talent."
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
And some people speculate that young journalist was none other than Hunter S. Thompson, although he never did put it on paper.
Hunter S. Thompson actually, early in his career, would say he didn't like J.D. Salinger, didn't like his writing, all that. But it was later in his career, in Hunter S. Thompson's career, that he said if it wasn't for J.D. Salinger, that's what inspired his writing and
Yeah.
and stuff. So early, I think Hunter S. Thompson was a little cocky, for sure, and
Do you
so
know what he said about it? He said that J.D. Salinger irritated him so badly that it motivated him.
Oh, yeah, well, like, later on, he was like, if it wasn't for him, he
Yeah,
wouldn't be the writer he was. So
because he understood that it is your enemy that drives you. People
mhm,
who break world records they don't break world records unless there's somebody behind them who will take first place if they don't break that record.
right.
Right? It's the same type of thing. Somebody who infuriates you and makes you so furious that you want to get to become the greatest author ever to destroy what they said.
Mhm,
They make you what you are, and once you get there, you realize, oh wait, the world is more complicated than I thought it was. Wow, was I
mhm,
dumb? Right?
right.
I've done it. I've done it a dozen times in my life. Holy, I really thought life was simple there for a while. Good God, I'm glad something disabused me of that. Right?
So
So,
out of this whole book, was there one quote in this book that you could pick out and say, this is what I like about this book is this quote. It just stands out to you. There's so much actually in there. Like the one you just talked about,
actually, it would
disappearing,
be
crossing the street, and
all I can really think of when I try to do that, when I try to do that mental exercise you just gave me, all I get is the sensory description when he's on the pond, on the frozen pond.
uh-huh.
That's it. That to me is the book. The 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 feelings that he's having there,
Mhm.
and the fact that I know this could he could fall in here, and it's really cold and he could die of hypothermia. There's tension, there's stakes, there's suspense, there's inner dialogue going on, there's sensory, ooh, it's crispy, and there's everything fuzzy like styrofoam or something, and like that weird when
Mhm.
snow gets too cold and it gets all styrofoamy, and that weird
Mhm.
squelching sound. And I was just there, and it was so captivating that it's certainly not what I remember from the first time that I read it, because
Mhm.
I went a
Oh yeah.
full. I actually figured it out. I went 20 years without reading it before now, 20 whole years, and
Mhm.
yeah, that was not what I took away from it the first time. But that is what I got from it this time. Was just the way that that was put together, and I think that's because I'm writing right now, like heavily, like you know, several thousand words a day. I
Mhm.
think that's why, because I would like to do that. Like that's like a mantra for me. It's like I'm gonna make somebody read this and have this experience, you know?
Right. I think for me, like you said, you take something out of it at different points in your life. This particular time, I liked people always clap for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
that's right.
liked
That's
it.
right.
And if you think of it, I mean, you just take it for what it says, it's true, but
Yeah,
go deeper into that, and that's what he's talking about. Basically, sums up the book. Adulthood is phoniness, the wrong reason,
yeah,
and that's what people clap at is the phoniness. You're clapping for the wrong reasons, and that's why he's trying to stay capture. He's trying to capture that innocence of childhood and stay there, even though he's like on that borderline of
yeah,
adulthood.
yeah.
And it
The,
gets
the,
into
the,
that like one time it says in there, the catcher in the rye in the whole book. I
yeah,
think it mentions it one time.
yeah. I
You know.
think he was seeking the good kind of naivety, like before everybody attached a negative connotation to naivety, what it meant then. I think that's what he's looking for is that thing.
That pureness.
Yeah, yeah.
You know.
The curiosity that is just transcendent of negativity and skepticism and all that, the
Hmm.
pure curiosity of just like recklessly wanting to know things, that wonderful is beautiful. And that's what you feel when you're reading something and you're really sucked into the story, and there's nothing on the paper that makes you stop and think about anything else or go, obviously you don't want typos, obviously the grammar has to work and everything, but the
Hmm.
very flow and the way that the character building's done, you have to be so sucked into that story that you're like that you have the naivety of like, I need all of this right now and I don't care if it kills me. Do you know
Hmm.
you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Yeah.
I know.
So that's the vibe that I get. And more never more so than on the pond.
Mhm,
And from now on I will call it the on the pond. And I even
mhm,
said this, I even put this in my journal. I said from now on When I want to create something like that in a story, and I'm going through the rough draft, I'm going to put some blue highlighter there, and I'm going to type the words "on the pond," and that'll
Mhm.
tell me go back here and do the on the pond thing.
Mhm.
Right? Don't stop now and do it because you're writing and everything's going. Don't stop and fiddle around. But the next time you stop because you don't know where your next direction is, come back here, build a pond, and then go back and keep writing.
Mhm.
And
Well, and
so
the thing is, this book, The Catcher in the Rye, it was published like in sections from. It says here 1945 to 1946. It was like a serial short story in a magazine, and
everything came out by magazine first for a while there in the late 40s and early 50s. Yeah.
yeah,
They really took a big experimental shot at that.
I
And
think
sci-fi
Fahrenheit
was the winner.
isn't Fahrenheit 451 that same thing, right? Wasn't
Yeah,
it published
Fahrenheit
in a
451.
magazine? It was
Just
published
about
in
everything that
Playboy.
Heinlein wrote.
It was
Yeah,
published in
everything that
Playboy.
Heinlein wrote came out serialized in science. Like science fiction was the genre that won out of that. Like they got like science fiction got the most out of that deal. It was
Mm-hmm.
the science fiction book, the stories that were written in magazines that really the science fiction genre actually came into full fruition. Before that, it was like an outlier that was like so dismissible and hated. And then that kind of then you got Heinlein and Herbert and just a few names, and then that gave it like I think Frank Herbert. I think Dune gave science fiction its actual sophisticated like okay yeah
I'm,
this can
I'm not a
exist.
big Dune fan. I'm not a big Dune
No,
fan.
it's a
I have a
product of its time, right? Like it's
right.
a product of its time. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was kind of the kind of anti-war
You know,
vibe that was going on in in Herbert's time.
I know a
Yeah.
lot of people before they read a book because they want to read the reviews, right? They want to make sure, what do other people think. And I was looking here and Goodreads, I mean, thousands of reviews on this book. On
Yeah.
Goodreads, average is 3.8. On Amazon, the average is 4.4. And on Barnes and Noble, the average is 4.2. This is out of 5 stars. So the thing I want to tell people is read it for yourself because it means something different to different people at different times in their life you know so somebody giving you a bad review, it's because maybe they haven't experienced certain things in life. I don't know, but I gave it 4.7. I think
I
it
mean,
should be in everybody's library.
yeah, like what reviews are supposed to do on something like quick reads, unless you're actually providing a detailed summary and overview and everything, you should not be giving bad reviews. You can't
Hmm.
do it short form because you have to be able to tell people, is it a bad book because it was edited poorly? Is it a bad book
Right.
because you don't like the content? Is it a bad book because the author did something you don't like?
But you also
Which,
have to think when you give a review, are you giving a personal review or a
yeah.
professional review? So,
Well, and
like
can you back up? And even if it's a personal review, that's fine, as long as you back it up with actual information
facts.
and it's not just purely your bias
Well,
misery, you know.
we've done interviews with authors on the Writers Lounge podcast on YouTube. Please subscribe, watch and subscribe there.
Yes.
But we've done interviews, and I read the books of every author that we interview, and there are books, and I had to separate myself personally from some of these books. Like personally, I wouldn't read it, or personally, I don't believe in whatever how the author's lifestyle is, or whatever personally, but I had to go to a professional level because now we're in a position where we're professionally reading these things and interviewing people. And as a professional person reading it, I give these some of the books we've done very high marks, and I'm glad. Hey, you're going sideways on us, Jay.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
glad. I'm glad that I
There
had
we
the
go.
opportunity to read these books. So if somebody is reading these reviews on The Catcher in the Rye and they're like, oh, look, it's got a 3.8, which means out of thousands, there's probably people that gave it 1 star out of 5.
Yeah. Yeah.
Give it a chance and read it for yourself. You'll be really surprised. and
And
I'm glad it's not made into a movie personally. I don't
it's amazing how many dullards there are too, as far as that goes. For instance, when I was yesterday, when I was kind of warming up for this event, right? Like I'm excited about this. I do love the book. I always did in some way. I didn't really get
Mhm.
it until now. I didn't understand it the first time I read it. I knew it was wonderful. I just didn't know all of the reasons why.
Why
Now
it
I
was
do.
wonderful.
Yeah. Now I do. I
Mhm,
knew it was necessary, but now I know why. Um, I'll put it that way. So,
mhm,
uh, just what I kind of wanted to elucidate is there are some reviews on YouTube, one lady in particular, where her review was of the character Holden.
mhm.
She hated Holden. The end. That's it.
Yeah.
She didn't like this character, and
Right.
therefore the book sucked because there was no other characters. Because Holden
But
didn't make out with anybody that she liked. Do you know
well,
what I mean? Like,
even as an author, as a writer, right? Even a bad publicity is still good publicity, because
yeah.
that piques my curiosity. If I've never read the book and I hate Holden, blah blah blah, I wonder why. Like why do you hate him so bad? You didn't go into detail to
Well,
let me know, so I'm going to
that's
buy the book now. You
that's
know.
exactly what I thought. I thought if all of these people in the world have all read this, and this silly person is suggesting that that this is a terrible book. I'm going to figure out why she thinks it's a terrible book and go, that's what makes it a good book because this one is a dullard. You know,
Mhm.
YouTube cancel that channel. I'm not going to name any names, but
No.
but you know who you are, and YouTube, you know who it is.
Wh-
Get rid of her. She's
Tell me
dead
off
weight.
air. Tell me off air.
Yeah, yeah, I
Text
will.
it to me.
Yeah, fucking oxygen thieves.
Right?
Oxygen thieves. And do you know what? I'm sorry if people don't like us, like the discussion of what's going on in the world. We try not to be political here. We really do, and we don't often do it. But what happened this week was pretty gross in the booktube land. Daniel Green, you can find him all over our channel. There's all kinds of playlists that feature Daniel Green videos. I've covered Daniel Green's fantasy news, etc.
Mm,
Excellent person. We had another one of these accusations of SA or sexual assault last week, last Sunday, I think. So 1 week ago. No, it was
mhm,
Saturday. It was so 8 days ago. And his response was almost immediate, within hours. And it was that he wasn't going to talk negatively about the person who was making these accusations or accuse them of anything. He
mhm,
simply said he had information that proved that it was not true, that it was all lies, or that it wasn't. I don't think he used the word lie, but he said none of it is true. He had the proof. Last night at midnight, my time. So I assume that means he just recently moved somewhere else in the country because he had a stalker. Him and his fiance had a former fan of his that was stalking them and like doing some really crazy stuff. So he moved to an undisclosed location, which happens to be in our time zone. So it was at midnight the video uploaded, and when I checked this morning on YouTube, it was about 9:30, and there was already 8 different apology videos from other YouTube channels who had immediately uh, went on the attack, slamming Daniel Green and his channel
mhm.
and causing him to lose 120,000 subscribers in a week.
And because why? In America, at least, I can't speak for Canada, but
Mm,
you will be our 51st state. Um, but in America, you're guilty until proven innocent. That's just how it
mm,
is,
yeah, it
and it's
seems that way.
it's a shame.
Yeah, like you could steal $999 worth of stuff from a store perfectly legally.
Yeah, but one penny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's silly. So anyway, that's something, and I just wanted to say to everybody, the reason I didn't bring it up before is because I wanted to wait for all of the evidence. I don't want to hear one side and make a decision based on that. I heard
Right.
her out when it happened. I did not look at it skeptically. I said, maybe that's a thing.
Mhm.
Then I hear somebody else say, I have other information. I go, I'm waiting for that information. And I did. And guess what? I'm not apologizing. I don't feel stupid. I didn't try to ruin somebody's life.
Mhm.
right? So think about it. Don't even
Mhm.
comment on this kind of scurrilous nonsense cancel culture garbage. Just don't
Mhm.
comment on it because you just help it. That's all you do. You put a comment, you can downvote it. Put a downvote. Great. On YouTube, you can
Mhm.
still put a downvote. On Facebook, any reaction you give is exactly the same to Facebook because they would prefer the negative.
Yeah.
But on YouTube, you could downvote something if you think it's trash, and it will help. That will help stop it from spreading as fast.
Mhm.
So, but anyway, that's that. I just wanted to briefly touch on that. We're talking about a book that's been the victim of cancel culture simply because some people who had some bad ideas did a thing while they were in possession of the book. They blamed the book and banned it. Well,
Mhm.
it's in the same vein. This whole cancel culture thing didn't start yesterday. It
Right.
started in the 80s
Mhm.
and it's
Well,
still going strong. And we're talking about a victim of it today. Two, two victims of it.
and you know what? In Catcher in the Rye, what happened to Holden? We went and saw his English teacher. He fell asleep, and he interpreted what his English teacher was doing as a sexual advance on him. I think he was like caressing his head while he was sleeping. Which, okay, yeah, that seems a little weird. I
It's a
wasn't
boundary
there.
issue.
Yeah,
It's a boundaries issue.
yeah, please don't do that while I'm sleeping. Don't look at me while I'm sleeping. But he
Yeah.
interpreted that as a sexual assault, and that's in the 40s, when he
Yeah.
wrote this, and early 50s when it's published. So it's an issue that really has. I mean, he touched on it, and I guess back then you couldn't go in deeper, but it's an issue that's been around forever. And as
Yeah.
a teenager's going to quickly interpret something, you know, and accuse because they don't know. Maybe the guy had a son that died and it just reminded him of his son. Maybe he was brushing hair or something away from. There's a spider on him. We don't know the whole story. We don't know
That's right.
what Mister with the English teacher. What was his name, Mister Anta? I don't like it because
Yeah.
it's very close to my last name, so I ain't gonna say it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the punishment and the reaction should suit the crime. I mean, you know, it's like, everything is on a spectrum, right? Everything's on a spectrum. We can't just put blanket figures on things and a mandatory maximum is just as bad as a mandatory minimum sentence. You know,
Mhm.
both of those things are stupid. They should all be kind of sitting on a scale or like a sliding scale where,
Mhm.
it all depends how something happens as to like I mean, what do you have a judge for if not to make calls like that, right? Like
Right.
the,
The
just the
circumstances, that led up
Yeah,
to it or
and cancel
whatever.
culture is just something that works outside of the law. They're just
Mhm.
saying, well, the law isn't gonna give us our pound of flesh, so we're gonna take it.
Mhm.
That's what it is. That's what I see it as. The wrong kind of vigilantism.
Mhm.
Vigilantism against an artist. What who the fuck wins in that scenario? Who the fuck gets anything out of vigilantism against an artist?
It's just about numbers, man. That's really all.
Zero people. Yeah.
The person making the accusation,
Yeah, it's
you know.
grift. It's grift. It's all grift. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so,
Absolutely right. So anyway,
so how many stars do
now,
you give it, Jay? How many stars you give this book now as an adult, not
oh
when you
yeah, yeah.
were a teenager?
I would say it went from probably 4 to about 4.4. And the reason for that is I'm I really do think that Orson Welles was correct in that to have a beautiful form of the English language, you need to have a certain amount of Anglo-Saxon words. That's what English is built on.
Mhm.
Anglo-Saxon is the Anglo-Saxon language. And so the language was formed around the Anglo-Saxon language. So it fits together nicely and has a good sound and good quality. The more Anglo-Saxon words used, Salinger used very few. He's a big romance language writer. And that's
Mhm.
usually a few points off for me versus Alexandre Dumas, who wrote everything's in French. It's in a romance language, Um, and I don't take those same points off because it's a romance language being a romance language. But sometimes when I read things and it's like it's somebody who speaks a romance language pretending to make an English thing kind of troubles me a little bit. And it just
Hmm.
comes down to simple word choices um and declining national pride, I think is one of it. It's like it's kind of become a faux pas in America to speak old English words. So, right now I'm writing a book that's just pounding all these old Anglo-Saxon English words in all the time because I think that's really, really important for us to do to keep language from becoming newspeak, which is if you haven't read it, the language of 1984. Or no, sorry, no, newspeak's from A Clockwork Orange, isn't it?
No, Newspeak is from 1984.
It is 1984. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
What is the language from Clockwork Orange called?
I'm gonna be honest. I haven't read that. I saw the movie, so I don't
Oh,
know.
you son of a bitch.
I have the. You know what? I have the book though. I have a book. Some. You know, it's over here. It's
Yeah.
behind me. I got the book behind me. You know what? Next month maybe.
We should review it because I would put it the next in line after Catcher in the Rye. If I was to say For Whom the Bell Tolls, as Ernest Hemingway passes the
Right.
torch to Catcher in the Rye, Catcher in the
Mm-hmm.
Rye, I think passes it to Clockwork Orange. Clockwork Orange, I believe, would then pass it on
I
to
I got
what's
it.
it called? Wow, shit, I can't remember the name of the one.
All right. Ugh.
Yeah,
All right.
Anthony
So
Burgess.
I'm gonna keep this book right here on standby. That means that's what we're reading next.
Okay,
All right.
yeah, works good for me. Um,
Oh, look, I'm looking at our YouTube video, which there's a little bit of a delay, and everybody saw my work pants, which are pajama bottoms. So now you all know what we wear from the waist down is pajama bottoms when we do our podcast.
Speak for yourself,
Mhm.
Joe. If
Whatever.
any,
Stand up.
if
I
any,
bet you got pajama bottoms on right now.
if anybody cares, I don't wear any pants because if I don't have to wear pants, I don't.
Ah!
That's ridiculous. It's like socks. Like, why would you wear socks if you weren't literally about to put them into filthy shoes? Like, you put that on when you absolutely must,
Mm,
when it's absolutely crucial. Now, I'm Scottish, right?
mm,
I'm a little bit kilt centric, right? So the whole slacks and bloody trousers and socks and other unnecessary accoutrements.
mhm.
They can kind of,
Yeah.
yeah.
Can we do that? Can you do that on YouTube?
Oh yeah,
Oh, okay. Right on.
yeah. You can. You totally can. You can also show men's nipples, but not women's.
Hmm.
Not saying it's sexist, but just
You know
maybe
what?
the rules
Like,
should be the same for everybody.
if you if you watch the Godfather when Michael Corleone, this is on TV, not the movie. So when you're watching it on TV, when he marries Apollonia and they have, go into the bedroom for the, consummation part of it, they actually just blur out the nipple. You see everything else. You see the cleavage, the whole, but they just blur out the nipple. Like that's the nasty part of something,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly.
But on a guy, you see them totally. I don't know.
It's a gun. It's a gunshot. It's a band-aid on a gunshot wound. Yeah, totally.
Mhm.
If you want to get super metaphorical about it. Okay,
Alright.
so while we got everybody here, and we have your attention, I do recommend, and I've
Critique.
been on critiquecircle.com for about 10, 12 years. This is a place where you go, you can upload your chapters, um, and it's a tit for tat system. So if I go on there, I have 0 credits. I start with 0 credits.
Mm,
I can find other people's work that they have posted. I can critique it for them, give them some editing tips, whatever they ask for. They can say, "Look, I need everybody to not worry about the line in it, and just what's wrong with this character arc or whatever like that." And you just go through, and you get points based on how many words you give them as a critique, the star rating that they give you, etc. will determine how many credits you get back. You use those credits to post your own work. So nobody's on there for free, um,
Of
so
course
to
not.
speak. Like that, you can't just go and troll somebody's stuff. You actually have to have the credits and whatnot. And it's really good. Last year, they have an AI program that scans the internet for everybody's posts that they have put in on there to find where people have tried to plagiarize it, etc. And last year alone, they helped catch 87 different people. They got settlements 87 times for
Wow.
when people tried to plagiarize authors on there. There isn't actually all that many authors on there. There's a few hundred, mostly in the UK and in the United States. But they do a really great job. There's some really great fiction there. If you just like to read, it's a great place to do that. It's totally, you don't need credits to read stuff. You just need credits to post stuff. So I mean, if you don't write but you just read, it's even great for that because you'll see all kinds of awesome fiction in its very birthing stages. There, you could see the rough draft of what will eventually be published, and there's stuff published that goes to big publishers from there all the time. So I really recommend it. Everybody head over there. As I say, I've been on there a long time, but I've really gone back on there recently to work on the editing for my story, and it's still a really great experience. They've updated it. They've done really great things. So I really think you should get over there and check it out. Um, and then also in addition, me and Joey are going to go through what we call tropes in writing, and maybe sort of also because it's adjacent to story beats, we might cover that too. Um, so like sometime over the next week, and I'll actually be going through and showing how the portion of a query letter that involves um telling your agent what the trope and the beats are so that they can sell your book, because the first thing you have to do to convince a literary agent to represent you is you have to convince them that they can sell that book, so you have to give them a marketing concept to work with, and that's called your elevator pitch. And then it's also just your tonal decisions that you make. What tropes are you looking for? What story beats are you covering? um and even if this
Eh,
is just comps, which is comparing your story to another. So for mine, I would say I'm taking a Stephen Erickson view of what empire is, and I'm combining that with a sort of hard magic look, like the sorcerer at River's Bend takes, with the kind of action sequences that you can see in Joe Abercrombie's work. This is kind of how you do that. If you don't cover any tropes and you want to do something totally independent that's never ever been done. But remember that Ernest Hemingway did say the good writers borrow and the great writers steal. So I just wanted to cover those two things,
And
and just say
how
that
long should a query letter be, Jay? Tell them.
one page. You
One
can
page.
use up that whole.
You gotta get all that information in one page.
Yeah, no, it can.
Mhm,
No, it's supposed to. No, it has to be no more or no less than three paragraphs, but it
mhm,
can take a whole page as long as it's one page. It does. You don't have to be too formatted. From what I've seen watching this week, I probably watched 16 hours of different interviews with agents, and they all say pretty much the same thing. If it
mhm,
looks like it's a template where you've just copied and pasted everything and sent it to 40 agents, I'm not
mhm.
interested. I'm not going to read it. If it
Yeah, you
looks
gotta
like you wrote it,
personalize it.
yeah. If you didn't write it specifically for me and you didn't write it in your own personal voice, I'm
Mhm,
not looking at it.
right.
So there we go. This has been a good review, Joe, and I'm looking forward to, yeah. I think A Clockwork Orange is something to really look forward to. It's a really gritty and interesting read, and it's a good segue from Catcher in the Rye. To be honest, if we're
Uh-huh.
continuing with the Americana, I guess the Americana classics thread, which maybe you could say goes back to Hemingway. Maybe you could say it goes back even further than that, but uh,
Mhm.
we'll continue in that thread with A Clockwork Orange. What are we going to cover after Clockwork Orange?
Okay, so more that'd be April. I don't know. What you?
We should keep moving forward in time, right? Because we
I mean,
did.
if you're doing well, if you're doing Americana, I like To Kill a Mockingbird, but I would think a lot of people already read that or saw the movie. I would want to.
I'm thinking something more from the '80s, from the '80s
What
or '90s, to
what what
continue
about
moving chronologically forward, or maybe the '70s.
what about Carlos Castaneda?
Yeah, yeah.
Something
Don
by him.
Quixote would be
The
another
real.
one.
Oh yeah. With that. That's not
No,
in the
that's
80s.
not Americana. Never
The
mind. That was a stupid thing to say.
1680s, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. And
We,
it's super old too.
all
Yeah.
right, how about this? Right now, next month, A Clockwork Orange, and we'll keep everyone posted on what April will bring. Because you don't know.
Suggest, give us
Yeah, suggest,
suggestions.
give us suggestions. You tell us what you want us to review. That,
Put it in the comments. Something Americana fiction from the 70s or 80s.
yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good idea.
So that we can
Hey,
just
oh,
keep this so we can keep this slow progression forward through time
but
on these great writers who did not get all partisan and activisty.
mm-hmm.
That's very important.
Oh, that
Your
didn't get
activism bullshit is has no place in fiction.
okay, then never mind. I had an idea. Hold on. Let me check. I'm looking on this other computer here. Let me make sure.
And that goes for the left and right, by the way. Don't be a fucking
Uh,
activist either way. You're just a jackass. Don't do it.
oh, okay. See, so Billy Jack, which not a lot of people know about Billy Jack,
That's true.
um,
I love
is
the movie. I love it.
I
I didn't read the book, but I love the movie.
that see that's what I was thinking. But that's a lot of activism there. So you got the Born
Mm.
Losers, which is technically the first one. Then Billy Jack, then the trial of Billy Jack, and then Billy Jack goes to Washington. So it depends on it's about school shooting, the freedom of, letting your kids learn what they're interested in. Um,
Yeah, I don't think Billy Jack rings as an activism piece to me. Um, I think it's a fair examination, but
mhm.
yeah, maybe. I know the song's in my head right now. Go ahead and cheat your neighbor. Go
Yeah,
ahead and cheat a
one
friend.
one tin soldier. Yep.
One tin soldier rides away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
I have a mural in the spare bedroom. That's my bedroom. Covers the whole wall of Billy Jack right there on the wall. I love the guy. I have a hat and everything.
I know. I know what it is.
What?
What book is Scent of a Woman based on? That's
Scent of a
Americana.
Woman
Yeah.
with Al Pacino. That movie. I never seen the movie, but is that the same thing you're talking about?
Yeah.
Sounds like a chick book to me. I don't know.
Oh no.
It's
No,
not.
sir.
Is that the
No,
movie where
sir.
he goes hoo-ah?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
How do you write that? I wonder how
he's
you write that.
constantly whoa.
Yeah, how do you spell that?
Um, well, it's an Anglo-Saxon nautical word, hua, and it's HOAA.
Mhm.
What it means is when you're when you drag if you were dragging let's say you were in the habit of going off and Viking in places. Not to say you are a Viking because it's not a goddamn noun, but
Right.
if you were Viking, like if you were doing the action of Viking, which is to raid, and you
Mhm.
wanted to beach your ship, you would come into the shore hard with your ship, like boom, you'd come in hard,
Mm,
and then all of you would jump out of the ship into the shallows, and you would have the barker, which is the person who calls out row, row, stroke, ramming speed, etc. He would go hoo, and everybody go hoo, wah. And that meant
mm.
everybody pushes up and drops. Who? Oh,
So why
like
does
that.
Al Pacino do it all the time? Or the character in the
Because he's
book?
a Marine. Because he's a
Oh, okay.
Marine. Yeah.
Alright.
Yeah, he was in the Marines. So yeah, that's them pulling their inflatable boat around like a bunch
Mm.
of ferries, like they do in the Navy. Just kidding. It's not true. But
For your
send a
complaints,
woman book.
please mail your complaints to Jay in care of the
No,
Writers
just send
Room
him directly to
Podcast,
my lawyer. He'll
right?
manage it. It's fine. Everybody, if you're watching this, you are just please go ahead. You're free to sue me. Let's get on the front page of the paper. No problem.
Yeah, sue me for what? I ain't got nothing, right?
Oh my goodness. Look at the name of the writer.
What
Scent of a Woman by Giovanni Arparino.
well, it's a very Italian name, it seems like.
I'm encumbered by Italians at all times.
That's why you got me here, huh? That's it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This Italians everywhere all
What
the
about
time.
what we should do, maybe a Harry Potter? No,
No,
we gotta get a younger crowd to do that.
yeah, yeah. You'd probably have to shoot me and then do it over my dead body. Yeah. So anyway, there you
I'm trying
go.
to look for other books. I don't know.
So Scent of a Woman, I think if
April?
you watched if you just went to YouTube and you watched like a compilation of Al Pacino's scenes from Scent of a
Mhm.
Woman, I think you would want to read the book immediately.
Alright. I'm just saying, I always thought it was a chick flick, so I never
There's
watched
there's
it.
a really good speech. So basically, the kind of main character, uh, he he was these guys were doing something stupid, and he just happened to witness it, right? And he wouldn't rat them out though. They knew that he knew who it was, and he wouldn't rat them out. And they ended up ratting each other out and all this, but they were still talking about expelling him just because he wouldn't rat, because he wouldn't tell the school who did it.
Mm,
And so they're having this hearing about him getting expelled, and they've got the whole student body and all the parents in this big auditorium
mm,
talking shit. And Al Pacino is sitting there with the kid Charlie, and he gets up and he does this speech to the dean and to all these people, and it's so great. And at one point he says, "You think you're making men, director? You're not. You're making broken little boys." And he goes, "You're out of order." And he says, "You're out of order. This whole place is out of order."
That's where that's from? I mean, I've heard that before.
Yeah, that's Scent of a Woman. Yeah, there's
Uh,
nothing. It's a pure bro flick. There is nothing woman related in that besides
mm,
him talking about the scent of a woman for one scene in the movie. That was the name of it simply for marketing purposes.
mhm,
Yeah. If it was called what it should be called, it would be called Jeffrey Archer already took a matter of honor, but it would be called to to have honor or something like that. It's very much in
mhm,
that vein, but in the American sense of the word honor,
mhm,
where you don't rat out your buddies,
mhm.
even to save your little career or your precious private school graduation or whatever. Speaking of Holden,
Mhm, right.
so that was a good one to I segued it. I totally made a
Good
segue. That was
segue.
yeah.
That was
And it
good.
was totally intentional in all the things, and yeah, I do everything intentionally. Yeah, that's right.
So, I highly recommend Catcher in the Rye, 4.7 out of 5.
Yeah.
You give it 4.4 out of
Four.
5.
Four
What
point
or
four, yeah.
4? Okay, do you highly recommend or
Or
recommend or
4.5. Yeah, yeah. I recommend everybody watch it for sure. I don't know about buying it.
read it?
I think you can just get it at a library. I
Oh, yeah.
think if you're older than let's say 30, I don't think you'll need to reread it. I think it's with such a small book. I mean that being
Mhm.
said, you could reread it every friggin' year. It takes 4 hours to read.
You
But
could probably find it in a thrift store for 50 cents, the paperback.
yeah, yeah. I have a cool quote from my book to share here.
Shiver.
For the quotes today. How's about your what's going on with your quote situation, Betty?
You know what? People always clap for the wrong reason.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good one. Less is more, more or less.
Right?
Yeah. So this is going to be. I guess this is a bit of a. This is more than just a simple quote, but this is the refrain uh, towards the end of the prologue. Would we would graciously ask that you consider one truth. There are times when the brightest shining hero on the hill and the wicked villain shrouded in the valleys. I'm going to start over. There are times when the brightest shining hero on the hill and the wicked villain shrouded in the valley's shadows both must do the wrong thing for the right reason, or the right thing for the wrong reasons. We were the speakers, responsible for carrying the truth about with messages of import or incredible mundanity. We were the guild, who plucked invisible strings in shadowy places to stabilize or decentralize the rulers of men and their many contrivances. We were young enough to be brave enough and just insignificant enough to attract too much attention. Enough so, anyhow. Such were the best of intentions. If only the passage of time and its erstwhile denizens could respect such things as intentions. The journey begins the day I was happily ambling along into the lion's den in the autumn of what you would come to reckon 1069 Anno Domina. And that's where my book's going to kick off from right there.
Oh. All right, I got a quote. Well, from Catcher in the Rye, and and I like this one too. What really knocks me out is a book that when you're all done reading it, you wish the author that wrote it was a terrific friend of yours and you could call him up on the phone whenever you felt like it. That doesn't happen much, though. I think that's a good
Yeah,
quote, too. You know,
yeah,
don't you feel
yeah,
like that? Like, there's authors. Okay, so the guy that wrote, oh my God, Into the Wild. That guy, John something or other. Uh, After I got
yeah.
done reading, it's like, boy, I'd like to just, you know, sit with him and hang out and smoke and have a beer and,
Yeah.
just learn more about it. That just seems like because he's gone on so many adventures. And then
Well,
there's
that's
authors that I don't feel like that, like Stephanie Myers. Oh, did I say that out loud?
yeah. Yeah. Well, that's something that is actually, I would say that there's less problem with that now. There are a whole bunch of authors who are on the internet all the time engaging with their fans, and particularly the series writing fantasy fiction writers.
Mhm,
Brandon Sanderson and Stephen Erickson are quite notable in this. If you go onto either the Malazan or the Cosmere sites, and you start going in and following and discussing their books, you will see those authors in there every day, talking to their fans about their work,
mhm.
and privately too. Like these are people who will answer DMs, right? Like
You
it's
know,
just,
I had
authors are a little more transparent than they used to be. They're not a bunch of hermits in the woods with old typewriters and 44 magnums
I think they should
anymore.
be. I had a lady get a hold of me yesterday. Don't know who she is. I mean, we're friends on Facebook, but I have a lot of friends on Facebook and followers. And she told me she messaged me and said, and never, I don't, like I said, don't know who she is, never heard, don't even know if she's liked any of my posts. But she
Yeah,
says, "Hey, I'm almost done reading your novel, The Ivory Coast Angel, and I wanted to let you know that I liked it, blah 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 blah." And I was like, wow, I've never had anybody actually get a hold of me that I don't know um, to let me know that. So I messaged her back, and she was like so grateful that I did that. Like, wow, this author. She goes like, I'm glad you took the time to get back with me. I guess like.
yeah.
I wonder if you did that to Stephen King or Dean Koontz, if he'd really get back with you or his people do it.
Stephen King, I'm told makes an effort.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know how they would ever filter the sheer volume that comes at Stephen King into a small enough stream that he could actually digest it.
Right.
Like, how many messages, if he sat there for a whole day, how far into his DMs do you think he could get?
He can't. I mean, he writes all the time,
He writes
so
he writes 8 hours a day. Yeah, he
right,
writes 8 hours a day.
and his wife writes, and I believe his son writes. So, I mean, he has to have people or a person or whatever, an intern. That's your job. Go through it, find some good ones. I'll answer them. You know,
Yeah, yeah, and that's
you,
really all you can do is just
yeah.
filter for quality and then address quality with quality, and that's really all you can do.
We're gonna be there one day, Jay. Both of us.
Yeah, for sure,
Hmm.
for sure. Okay, well, I think we can probably stick a pin in it now, eh?
Yeah, sure. We
Yeah, we're
over
good.
an hour, right? Yeah. Oh my God, we're at 90 minutes. Holy cow.
Oh, cool. That's a
Hmm.
good book. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it. Everybody, make sure you go and do the subscribing and following and liking and sharing and discussing things
On
in
the
the
Writers
places.
Lounge on the Writers Lounge podcast page
Yeah,
on
and
YouTube.
Facebook and YouTube. You guys are getting your asses handed to you by TikTok still. So just
Mhm.
wanted to let you know that you're
And
just awful at this point. You're Like it's
Well,
not even close. Like we're
we
talking like an ass whooping, like a Dallas Cowboys game, right?
in the
It's
Writers
bad.
Lounge podcast, or the Writers Lounge page on Facebook, we just reached 700 members, and on
Mhm.
our YouTube channel, we have 55.
It's not cool.
So that's like less than 8%. If we could just get that number up, because if we can get 100 people that subscribe to the Writers Lounge podcast on YouTube, we can start going live on that page, and that's
And
our
and
goal.
and and many other advantages as well.
Oh yeah.
But that's the big one.
But next month, what are we doing, Jay?
Yeah,
Clockwork
we're doing
Orange.
A Clockwork Orange. We're going to cover Anthony Burgess's A Clockwork Orange.
Okay, making
And
sure.
so what was the last other thing that I was going to say now? Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah, that's it.
um,
So if you can, please get over to the YouTube. Help us out. Get those numbers up a little bit higher. Because I'll tell you this: if you went onto Facebook to get this app on your phone, and you said sign in with my Google, then you have a YouTube account.
mhm.
If you have a Google, then you can follow, like, and share YouTube videos. Right? If you have Google, and
Mhm.
everybody has Google, don't tell me you don't.
Right,
It's not
right.
hard. You might have to pop out of Facebook for a second and, take in some oxygen that hasn't been filtered through Facebook's particular atmospheric controls,
Mhm.
and just kind of see what the rest of the internet looks like outside of this app. I think you should once in a while. I really do. And we're really eager for you to do that, but we're still going to make it easier for you to see the program on Facebook, because we're not playing chicken with you about it, or being like that. We're going to make it accessible for you. But if you want to help out more, then you
Mhm.
you head over to YouTube, because they'll reward us more than Facebook will, and that's just how it is.
Yeah.
So that is the end, and we hope to talk to you soon. We have a couple more interviews coming up. We're gonna be talking to Anton soon. We're going to be catching back up with some writers who have some books coming out. I'd like to get back with Carrie on a and I meant to talk to you about this privately, Joe, but I can mention it. I'm just thinking about a way to talk to Carrie about something more specific than we did last time.
Mhm.
Something really drill down on the topic, and really explore it with an editor of that caliber. I think that would be fun.
Well, I think we should maybe have like a meeting that's not live or recorded, and she could show us or tell us what she thinks would be good.
Yeah,
Also, we're going to be doing a live interview with David Tamarin, who is a splatterpunk writer, has many splatterpunk genre books out. We'll be doing that on the 20th, so just a few days from now.
and for
So
those of you who are
join
wondering,
us
we're
for
not
that.
talking about the former British Prime Minister, David Cameron. That's a different one.
Right.
Different David Cameron.
Oh, Tamarin,
Oh, Cameron.
Tamar, Tamarin, yeah.
Okay.
So tune in for that, 6 o'clock on the 20th, 6 o'clock Utah time. So whatever math that is for you, wherever you're
That
at.
that'd be eight. That'd be eight on the East Coast.
All right. Okay.
8 on the East Coast, and 7 for the Gappers in, I don't know, Missouri.
Hmm.
Bloody whatever else is in that godforsaken no man's land, Colorado.
Right. Or no, yeah, 5 o'clock in liberal California.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's right.
Sounds good.
Yes, yes, spot on, spot on.
Yes.
All right, everybody, be good to each other, and don't do
Peace.
anything I wouldn't do.
Mhm.
Cheers. The stop button on here irritates me a lot on a regular
I'm
basis.
I'm waiting to say anything because last time I said something and we were still recording.
I don't
All
know.
right,
It
look.
tells me that it's done recording, and then I don't know if that's true. We
All
probably
right,
both
so
have to hit our mic, and what we should just do is, rather than worry about the recording, we should just hit our cameras and mics, and then hit stop recording, and we can just talk, and it'll just be blank screen.
mhm.
Do you know what I mean? Like we could just mute and hit our camera when we're
Right. Well,
done.
'cause you, like